In this week's Memes and Machines, we talk about artificial intelligence. It has been a big week. Everything from OpenAI's new model to Heygen to Adobe, new products, new leaps forward. What does this all mean? What's interesting? What are the differences and what should you pay attention to? We speak about business models, how you as a six-person team can compete with the tech titans. We dive into the skills of marketeers and content creators. Very similar, the skills you need to set you up in the future. Distribution is one of your only moats. How do you improve your ability to distribute your message through language? And finally, we talk about our collective hatred for dull content creators and people that lie online. This is a bit of a rant.
In this week's episode, we talked about a brand new Chinese video model from a team of less than 6 people. So this proves the age-old question of being bigger is not always better.
Boom.
In 2024, people really need to think about balancing integrity with clickbait and what that looks like in the middle and how they can get the best results for their brand over the long term.
Poetic. Love it.
Sit back, grab a cold beverage from the fridge and relax, because you're now locked into the sounds of memes and machines.
Memes and Machines, we're back. Good to see you both. Ben, you don't look as hungover this morning.
I'm feeling fantastic today. Friday, the sun is out. Couldn't be better.
Good.
That's the
stuff.
spirit. That is
Good
the spirit.
Stuff. Cutting light well. It's always interesting. I love seeing a friend vulnerable and like they have to then they then have to have a 1-hour conversation where they have to say things and try not to sound stupid. What a challenge.
There's nothing I enjoyed about last week, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But you made it, and the dedication was appreciated.
And then I see that you fucking uploaded a clip of me last night as well, which, was, looking my best as well.
I will tell you that story. I was on the train on the way back. I thought I'd had a really busy day. I'd not posted anything. And I saw that click and I went, you know what, Ben, we had a little chat yesterday. I thought I'll drop that one. Good for brand.
Yeah, it's Friday, like 8 p.m. I was like, I'm getting all these notifications on my phone. And I'm like, oh, what has he posted? I just see my face.
Yeah, last week was a bit of a disaster. We had tech issues. We had drunk co-hosts, all of it. Anyway, gents, we can only go up from there. This week, we're going to nail it. Big week in AI. I want to talk about AI, a unusual topic for us to rant and speculate and talk about. But I'm going to start with OpenAI, obviously a dominant force in the space. They dropped what has been called Strawberry in isolation, and they've now officially named that GPT-01 or 01. And without coining a phrase that Ben hates, it's a game changer. Literally changes the game. And I suppose to give you a very high level view, if anyone's not seen or been on LinkedIn yet, basically the big improvements are reasoning, PhD reasoning. Apparently it's exceptionally good at code, although I haven't validated that. It actually thinks in sequence before it answers. And some of the compromises it's had to make to do that is latency, speed, usage, uses a lot more processing power to get to the right answers. So it seems to be the first step towards using models for different things, meaning you'll have models that solve complex problems and take on big challenges, and you'll have smaller models that have lower latency and are more actionable and useful for everyday tasks that maybe require less deep thinking or less architecture around the problem that you're trying to solve. So firstly, I'm going to come to you, Chris. Give me your thoughts. Have you had a play around yet, and what are some of your observations?
Well, it's so new that I had a very minor play around with it just before we came onto the podcast this morning, but it only came out literally yesterday. So fascinating. The reasoning makes a lot of sense. There was a lot of issues with reasoning. A typical example was, and a viral one, is how many R's are in the word strawberry. If you ask 4.0 that, it will tell you 2. And if you ask the new one, it will actually get the right answer. So that's
they put that as like they put that as, I'm just on it, they've put that as one of their like 1 out of the 4 like template questions, actually.
Yeah,
it's
it makes
there.
a lot of sense. It's like a benchmark for it, because that is, how powerful 4.0 was. It still didn't know how many R's were in strawberry. And that's a very unreasonable thing for a powerful model to be able to not do. So a long time ago, there was discovered this thing called chain of thought prompting and chain of thought reasoning. And this is the latency thing you're talking about. It's, stringing together prompts to make sure that the actual answer that comes out of the end is more accurate to the actual answer than just next word prediction, which is what, next character prediction in accuracy. But yeah, that's basically where we're at now. There have been a lot of like hyped up things, like it's 100 times more powerful, all of these things. Let's see. The use cases you describe with code, not so interesting to me. But the use cases in terms of reasoning and getting more accurate answers, definitely more interesting to me. So certain parts of it appeal to me more than others. But yeah, really interesting that they've come out with this now, actually, because everyone's waiting on SearchGPT and Sora, which are 2 things that they announced way before this thing, that this one's come out first.
Yeah. Ben, I think you're probably well placed. You should have a play around and just see how creative it is.
I don't know. Honestly, I want to say not so interesting to me because
Fair enough.
Like, I don't see enough. I've done my searching, let's say. There's not enough innovators and pioneers in the I'm going to use ChatGPT for content creation space or ideas space. All I see is it like people doing really technical, hard things, like, and building stuff. And I'm just like, I don't want to use it. I don't care how quickly it can fucking solve a maths problem, I don't need to do that. Like, so this new model, a lot of people are hyping at it, but like, show me some actual practical examples that like it's significantly better in than the older model that are like have a widespread generic appeal and application to most people. I don't know. Can it build? Is it better at building a diet for me? I don't know. Is it like, how can I still struggle? Or maybe I need to go back and still kind of trawl the internet to find the use cases, but I still really struggle to think about like to build a habit of using chat. I think a lot of people struggle with this. Build a habit of using ChatGPT, finding like the right workflows and things, and go, I need this problem. ChatGPT, because I know I can use it for that. And that's where I think I struggle with, is just knowing how to use it and when to use it and like getting the most out of it.
So I'll give you a take where I think it is useful, and these are my early observations. Because if you ask a variety of questions like, create me a content calendar for X between this date and this date, on this topic, consider these factors, right? It'll give you a very loose 0 to 1 outline. It'll give you some instruction. It'll be thoughtful about key topics. And it could do that before. The difference I've noticed this time is it goes through a level of sequencing and reasoning. So first it'll map out topics you might care about. It'll then try and validate them in some way for accuracy. That's another thing that these models before would regularly hallucinate because it was called one-shot prompting. Basically this idea that you ask a question and you get an instant response. Now it's going through a sequence that is then challenging that initial response, maybe adjusting it, and then giving you something more accurate. So I do think it's important. And the analogy I would give you, one-shot prompting, if I ask you, Ben, write me an essay right now, you wouldn't just have one shot at it. You wouldn't just go in a straight line. And that's fundamentally how we've been trying to use prompt engines, was to have one shot. Actually, you'd go, right, I'm going to write something, then I'm going to go away, research, then I'm going to reiterate. And this is a new field of AI, and it's how models will interact with one another. But obviously in the programming, it exists within these large models and these large companies, is agentic processes. So combining slightly different thought patterns, data sets, models together to get better outcomes. So as much as I go, is the world going to change from, say, GPT-4 to 5? No. I think coders, from what I gather, seem to be the most excited about this, and I have to kind of trust their judgment in that sense because I don't know what I'm talking about. But I would say this is a meaningful step forward, and I think it's that first kind of big stake in the ground between, like, I'm going to describe like multi-utility AI, the stuff that we use day to day that's like really basic asks, and then more complex reasoning. And this is the first stake in the ground from these types of companies.
I actually agree with both of you. I think you're
Get off the
dead
fence,
right, Ollie.
Get off the fence, Chris.
No, I'm going to give you both of the
too.
reasons too, because the agentic thing is huge. The task orientation rather than the single shot prompting, like I agree, is totally right. But Ben, even the experts say they need new benchmarks, because this idea of, it's slightly better at mathematics or this or that is just totally not useful to the average user of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So you're right in that, there should be more personalized, identifiable benchmarks. Like I do content creation, and it's now better at doing that workflow now, and therefore it's useful to me, So I think both of you are right. It is a big step in the right direction, agents-wise, and it is also needing new benchmarks as to how it's going to be useful to each individual user, because we've seen specific coding ones coming out that are even more powerful than just ChatGPT. So then it's like, if that's only one of the tasks that it fulfills for you, and it's a very low-level task, then again, it's not that useful in the benchmark, right?
The latter point you make there, though, is really important. That's the opportunity.
Right.
The world, I've thought a lot in the year and a half of what is left over from a business opportunity standpoint. If we are heading in a direction where models can do everything from law to marketing and to developing to design, you suddenly go, well, what is left over? And actually, I don't think we, in the near future, enter a world where the models understand the problems or the sectors that they're operating in well enough. And that for me is the arbitrage, the knowledge arbitrage that we have over, say, other people. Like Ben, you would be, although that you're not technical in nature, you would have a much greater success or chance of success at building AI creator tools than probably 99% of the tech community, because you understand what a creator needs and you have that domain authority. And I think that's where the opportunity for entrepreneurial types, independents, freelancers, I think this is like an interesting time, because we don't want them to be able to do everything perfectly, or we're all doomed. We're doomed when they do everything perfectly.
I had an interesting thought last night. I thought, we're maybe 1 or 2 years away from content creators like Ben just being able to spin up their own app and solve their own problems. And then as soon as that is the case and it proves useful to other people, that's a business model right there. Because I think most of the best business models were things that were used to solve internal problems that then become a product. Rather than thinking of a product that can fit a market and how you sell it and market it. No, solve your own problem. If you're already a business that has a problem, like let's say it's content curation, and you figure there's nothing out there right now, so you go to ChatGPT, spin up an app that solves that problem for you, and then you say to other people how useful it's been, you're your own case study, and that's how it thrives. And it came from a real purpose. It didn't come from I want to make millions of dollars. It came from I want to solve my problem. So it's fascinating to think about that, because it is possibly a year away from ChatGPT being an agent good enough that you could just set it on the task of, this is what I want you to content curate. Here's all of the variables, and it will just spit back to you a ready-to-use app that you wouldn't need to go and buy a subscription to a SaaS platform from, which is fascinating and worrying to SaaS platforms.
I think it depends. The reason I say that, so imagine if the average person now has the capability to do that, Most things aren't binary. It's like, I know this piece, but I'm missing a whole host of knowledge. The challenge you have, what I suppose organizations really have, is multiple vantage points, meaning you'll have product teams that probably know the art of possible better. Alongside that, then you have specialists that know how to sell and package a product or a service.
Oh, yeah.
Then you have the people that understand the sector, that have maybe the technical knowledge or the understanding knowledge. I think an individual will struggle with all that, even with agentic processes and help.
But you're talking about the post-product market. I'm talking about I'm a founder with a
build the MVP. I create stuff. Yeah.
Imagine that you're just Ben, a solo content creator, and you have one particular problem. You don't have a team of people to market your SaaS app. You don't have any of this stuff. You literally say, I'm looking for a tool. Nothing exists. I'll go to ChatGPT and see if I can get one built. What you'll get is a rough, bare bones back-end thing that nobody would use as a product. But if it solves your problem, then you can build it into a product and build a team around it and then launch it. But it's going to be solo apps for solo creators very, very soon.
I think the funny thing is, though, the best product doesn't always win, even the best product fit for purpose. Just generally, because that's not
right
how we buy things. We buy things by majority group. A lot of people use something. Psychologically, we're drawn into that. We buy things through the fear of missing out. You know, we buy things because we are habitual as creatures. So the interesting thing about this whole equation, we talk a lot about the technology and the possibilities, but the human is still at the center of this whole equation.
Oh, yeah.
And we are deeply flawed. We are stubborn. We don't like change. We are slow to adapt. So consider all of these factors. So I'm with you, Chris, in the fact that like the art, it's going to be fascinating, and there's some cool stuff already happening, like incredibly cool stuff. I just don't think, I think we're going to be the barrier for like real change that you're describing. This kind of democratized, completely empowered individual. I don't know if we'll get that far, but you know, we're speculating, right?
I think distribution is the king there. You know, as someone solving your own problem with an app, you don't necessarily know how to market and make it into $1 billion SaaS company. But I think everyone will have this in-house ability to solve problems. I'll give you a great example. I saw someone as a viral video the other day, and they used Claude 3.5 to do this. They said, I'm out to dinner with 6 friends, build me an app that can split the bill 6 ways. And within 5 minutes, they had a copy and paste app that had sliders. It had everything on it. It would go up and down when people had more money. You could basically, it coded a bill sharing splitting app without needing to go and find one and pay 99p in the app store for it. You know, like it just built it and then it was ready to use. And that was one of the problems that I'm talking about solving. I'm not talking about the next HubSpot or Salesforce or something like this. I'm talking about small level, like creator tools that could get 1,000 people to use them if it proves useful to you. And then it could grow into something bigger.
Yeah, it's like the sense of you have a very unique way of your creative process. I say unique. It's like a little bit like you have a slightly different way of concepting than most people. So a tool...
It's just going to democratize app building in general. You know, like Ben, who has no development experience, will be making apps in the future. And it's not just the app building coders of today. It's going to be everyone. Same way that Midjourney's allowed everyone to make images, and Runway's allowed everyone to make video, and 11 Labs allowed everyone to do sound effects. These are all democratized because of the technology that's allowed for it.
Will Ben AI have equally as strong opinions? Will Ben AI do podcasts?
Ben GPT.
I don't know whether I'll end up building an app because there'll still be barriers, and I'd still rather get someone to do it for me.
I would pay for a Ben GPT just to give me like sarcastic notes on my stuff. That would be great.
The one thing that I want right now that somebody could build for me, and you can, I'll distribute it, and we can make 100k a month easily. Is just an app that's connected to OpenAI's API. It's connected to either TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube's API, and I can just drag and drop a profile, and it will analyze all of the engagement numbers, comments, transcripts, what's on screen, and essentially basically create me my content calendar. It will tell me what my best hooks are. It will use psychological reasoning to understand why things have done well and why they haven't done well. And I could expand that out into doing that across 100 profiles. I could find 100 profiles from people in my niche who are doing very well, drag and drop all of those profiles into this. And then it will use all of that data to build a content strategy based off of all the viral videos across thousands of videos, hooks, everything, to create and formulate a strategy that's then actually looks at my page and looks at what I currently do and understands my style, and then basically creates the content based off my style, based off all of virality and data across other content. That's the future. If someone builds that now, it will do serious numbers. I can tell you that.
You've got a great segue here, because I watched a podcast with the YouTube CEO, and he said that that's not allowable. Transcripts are not directly allowed to be pulled from YouTube, and this is why they're pressing lawsuits against the major AI companies, because there is certain stuff allowable from YouTube, like thumbnails and things like this, because they're for SEO purposes. Obviously, search engines need to index this stuff, but what's not allowable is to actually download the videos and the transcripts of the videos and then feed them into an AI tool without giving any copyrights or IP or like royalties to the creator. So there's a lot of YouTubers up in arms right now because it's been proven that OpenAI and others have trained on their content, and it's been leaked and it's been going through the courts right now. So that app can't exist, Ben. But what's
TikTok
interesting...
it can. TikTok don't give a shit. So,
well, you brought up an interesting thing I wanted to mention is if you permitted this app to do it on your own stuff, then you're the rights holder to all of the content that's uploaded to YouTube. So you would be able to predict and give it your own like stuff. But what you wouldn't be able to do is go and look at 100 other people's content in the same way.
Says who?
The YouTube CEO. He says it's illegal what these companies have done by transcripting and taking the videos, and that's not part of the terms and conditions of the platform. They've violated the terms of service.
I think it's distinctions, and I'll give you an example. So once you have API access and you're building, I say, a social listening platform, you're getting access to all the data of every person. Yeah. What I think people in management and senior leaders within technology companies, the platforms themselves, they're trying to safeguard, not necessarily from a moral obligation and a legal compliance standpoint. I think they're just trying to safeguard against their competitors. This is a defensive play. So them saying like OpenAI shouldn't be using our data, it's because of the volume and the scale. I think if you have third parties that are co-authoring and building products, like I see a world where that app that Ben described is possible, but it has to be done in conjunction with the platforms because the terms and conditions have to be updated. There's a lot of nuance to that. In the meantime, the internet's the wild, wild west. What you were describing before, Chris, like anyone can spin up everything. All models will be, or many models that are very powerful will be accessible remotely. Like the onus then is on the individual. People are just going to build. I'll give you an example. Linktree, you know, the link in bio, that actually, that's a breach of terms and conditions.
Of which platform?
Meta. You're not, Instagram.
Wow.
It's already...
You're not supposed to have multi-links. You're only supposed to have one link.
You're not supposed to. It's a breach of terms and conditions.
Wow, so, I didn't know that.
They built a very successful business off the back of something that was a breach because it was so insignificant in the Meta ecosystem. It was good for Meta just generally to a degree. People have these organizations are complex. They have stakeholders all over the place making different decisions. So I don't think it's as binary as like you are allowed and you're not. I think right now a lot of people are just going, we need some safeguards. We need some guards.
Well, they want to monetize. This is the thing. Like Reddit closed off to its its robot text file actually closed off all AI tools scraping Reddit.
Yep.
And then that's because they wanted Google to pay an absolute wedge to train it into Gemini officially. You know, they'll give them the API once they've paid for the
the same.
Enterprise.
Elon
exactly.
Same with X.
They're all going to do it. They're all. My suspicion is Elon bought X for that purpose.
100%. Probably.
It's a large language model training data set that he wanted to close off. And bang, you know.
I don't think he bought it for that reason. I thought he got like chickened online into buying it and like regretted it and went, fuck, I have to buy this thing now. And inadvertently, it'll probably be smart for that reason that you're describing there, but I don't think it was as intentional as that.
Maybe not.
Cool.
But yeah.
To argue. That aside, it wasn't just OpenAI that released their big announcement. There were a whole host of other things from Adobe, Heygen. Just give us a run through, Chris, of like what are some of the cool things that happened this week.
My favorite one was MiniMax, and MiniMax is a new Chinese video model. Can only generate 5 seconds in a text-to-video format right now. Doesn't have image-to-video capability, which is a big issue for continuity of people like us that are creatives that actually want to make stuff that you can control. Because continuity when you don't have image-to-video is just luck or guesswork. But saying all of that, it's the smoothest one I've ever seen. So this leapfrogged it above Runway in terms of smoothness of generation, which is
What do you mean by smoothness?
I mean, like frame to frame, it looks some of them are quite glitchy. They have kind of like pauses in the movement, and you lose that immersion because of the Canny Valley. It just seems too surreal or not real. And you lose that human element. This one looks like cinematography from a Hollywood movie buster thing. It's really amazing. And the thing that it's so special at, and I've only just learned this because we had an amazing Hollywood producer tell us about it yesterday, is that you can give it all of these cinematic keywords now that others just could not take. And it has a much bigger context window. You can add up to 2,000 words in your prompt. So you're talking like multiple paragraphs just for a 5-second shot. Like, aerial footage sweeps down in an orbital style to be panning towards a character who moves in a circular. I don't know these keywords, but
why would you add 2,000 words? Because
it can understand them and actually do that. So the reason that those other video, there's no point. They don't allow 2,000 words in the other video platforms because they simply won't understand past a certain paragraph. But this one can literally do nearly everything you tell it within those 2,000 words inside a 5-second shot.
Well, what on earth would you be telling it to do in 2,000 words with 5 seconds? Like, I'll go to take a step back. What my question is, how much difference is the impact of the prompt have on the video? Like 500, 50 words, 100 words, 500 words, 1,000 words, 2,000 words. Is it like 2,000? Can 2,000 words be too much? Like,
totally.
Because they're not complex, they're not good enough to understand super.
It's
like to design the whole video, right?
It's the very first iteration. But like Ollie said, with the large language models and the agentic way that we're going, this is the future of filmmaking and video. Because essentially, you're going to be able to generate up to a 1 minute 1080p scene, and you're going to describe every single shot in that scene. Imagine that it's a music video, and you have a single shot where you go through a doorway, you turn right to a kitchen where you describe the whole kitchen, every angle of the kitchen, you describe how you leave the kitchen, and then you go to the stairway, and then you go up the stairway, and all of this can be like drones or whatever types of shots. So that's going to be the next step for this stuff. But what is fascinating about MiniMax is just how many keywords that it can actually understand and put into your actual output. So I've been saying for a long time, we're in this period of quality versus coherence. And this is the sort of difference between the models, is some are very good quality, but don't listen to your prompt entirely. Some are very coherent to your prompt, but not so good at quality. And this is the first one that sort of bridged that gap where the quality and coherence is aligning somewhat to be able to get like actual output that matches what you said at an incredible level.
So it's really interesting you describe it in that way, because I had this maybe naive impression that all models were becoming ubiquitous. The kind of, I can do everything. The reality is there are always restrictions and trade-offs. There's always tension. If you want speed, you don't have complexity.
Exactly.
If you want creativity, you maybe don't have structure. If you want, there's always these trade-offs you have to make. And I spoke to the former CEO of Microsoft Ventures, and they're building some fascinating things in in hardware alongside, large models. And his vision for the future was creating an environment that's model agnostic, it's technology agnostic. And the idea is we will use every different model that will be dialed into very specific things. And what you described, Chris, is there's a world where I know exactly what I want, frame by frame, continuity. I want every little detail to be prescribed. And instead of me loosely describing and then generating something 50 times and wasting all the energy, the processing power, intern cost, I can get to the right answer very quickly. But that's a very unique scenario in probably high-end production where it's required maybe for film, music videos, some of the things that you're involved in. For the everyday user, which is like social content, imagery, where it doesn't have to be as prescriptive. You don't need continuity of scene and story. You go, well, maybe I make a different choice where I need more inspiration and variety, and
Totally.
so I've really evolved my own thinking on the future direction. Part of me went, it's all going to merge into one and be won by a handful of winners. Maybe true, but the more I think about it, I think there's room for people that A, understand the problems, and B, are dialing things in for very specific needs.
Totally. I totally agree with that. And do you know the most fascinating fact about this MiniMax model? Guess how many people are behind the model?
4.
You're gonna...
6.
6.
I was going to say 6. You stole my thunder,
Yeah.
Chris. That was a
So you guys both guessed under 10. Now they're competing with $100 billion valuation of OpenAI saw it and beating them to the punch. A team of 6 people from China just launched the 3rd best video model creation out there.
How is that possible? Because are they just fucking wizards, or is it because it's actually becoming not that difficult to create the model?
They are wizards because to do it at that scale and that amount of people and at that cost and at that quality, and their foundational model builders is unheard of, actually.
Okay.
Runway is hundreds of people. Sora is thousands of people. This is 6 people. And
how
now
do
they
you
just
build
jumped
a model?
to number 3.
Can you just explain?
It's really difficult.
Where do you start? Do you have are there open source models for people where people on the dark web or anywhere where people can start and then build on top of? Right.
This is the This is a good segue, actually, because this is the criticism that all of the current video next gen platforms are getting. Is they're using a database which is proven to have YouTube content in there, and lots of them. My favorite YouTuber who does the SciShow, he said that he has a disproportionate amount of his content in there. He said 25% of the educational YouTube stuff is his content that he's uploaded to YouTube. So he found it very disheartening that he was never contacted by OpenAI or any of these companies that have proven to use this data set, which has been collected, by the way, by open web scraping, and that's kind of how they get away with it. Essentially, the one that Midjourney used was called the Lion 5B, spelled Laion, and it's actually a not-for-profit based over here in Europe. So all of these California-based startup AI companies are referencing a European-based not-for-profit data company that's scraped millions, if not billions, of images from the web, and they've text and image paired them then. So that means, imagine it was a photo of a Coca-Cola advertisement. Not only is it got that, but it's got a perfect meta description of that image in text form. So that's really important to training a foundational database, as you need these image text pairs. And this is a great expression, but bigger does not equal better. If you have a messy database with 10 billion images in that don't text image pair as good, you'd be better off with 1 million that's clean. And it is exactly the description of that image and is a better foundational model. So that's all I can, know about the technical side of things is it's always everyone's impressed with the trillions of parameters and stuff, but we shouldn't be so. It's about the efficiency and cleanness of that data.
So what I will say is I think we found our first memes and machines merchandise. Bigger does not always mean we will wear that proudly. We will pioneer the small guy. I'm here for it. Really interesting though, because so like I had that perspective. Bigger doesn't always mean better. Like quality of data matters. You know, enriching
Yes.
data, making sure because it's noise. Otherwise, you need clarity.
Yeah, exactly.
What I would say there was I was looking into kind of some of the advantages of Grok, and one of the things that they did was the ability to basically read information. In simple terms, Grok can read information better than most models, right? Read information, and you go, well, people can't read that quickly, so it's actually redundant. In single prompts, it's like pointless having such an expansive number of I forgot the phrase, but fundamentally that's what it was distilled down to. And then you go, well, in a world where AI speaks to AI, again, agents, and we've mentioned this before, the ability to read information very quickly becomes actually really important. So there are models out there that are actually fundamentally built, not with people in mind, but being effective. And these are models that probably have more data. They have much wider context windows. They consider way more parameters. They're probably not any more better when a human uses them, but when an AI that can do so much more and so much faster than a person in terms of rationalizing information, it just gets weird. And one little add-on I want to make to your points around scraping the internet. I was telling Ben earlier, there's a company called expand.ai.
Right.
And what they basically have done, meaning you can API call any website. So you can plug in data sets from any website, which is like wild. That's not permission. They're literally scrape, and they're a reasonably big company. Well, I don't know how big I'm making that up. But the point being is, for developers, this is like, make the internet your API is their entire messaging. I'm reading it here. You can add your own data. You'll come back. It's getting into this really interesting space where infringement almost doesn't matter anymore. There's too
That's why
much.
they're all closing off, though. That's why the robot texts are all going disallow, because then as soon as these guys try to do that, that's going to be breaching their terms and conditions. So it's going to be a lot of lawsuits in the future, to be honest with you. A lot. Especially in Europe, where we have like GDPR and other things to worry about. You know, the Americans less so.
Well, I don't know.
How do you...
Sorry, Ben.
I was just going to ask another question about the text-to-video models.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to open it up to, like, from a business perspective, how do you see who's going to win the race? Like, you know, we can't have 100, we can't have 50 text-to-video models. So I'm just wondering, like,
we definitely can.
We can, but you know, when it comes to like from a business perspective, they're going to, in order for them to be profitable, they're going to have a minimum amount of users, right? So
they are, but I think they might do what Ollie said. They might go down the specificity route. You know, like you might have the
that's what I would like
model,
to see.
Yeah, the video model for recruiters that just does, you know, trained on recruitment based content, and then, you know, take the word recruiter and pass in the 10,000 industries that it could be a mini model for.
Because what made me think this, what is kind of a side point, is that when I've been using these models, I'm really disappointed with the lack of like examples that they give for like good use cases to people. Like we discussed, like you saying the MiniMax one is really good for cinematic stuff. Why not fucking tell me that? Like tell me that and like be like, hey, you're a creator, right? Or like, so I click on the create, like it's just basic, you know, marketing. I'm a creator. I click on there. Here are all of the use cases. We think our model can be useful for creators. Here are some example prompts. Like, and none of them have this. They all just have like example prompts. Oh yeah, butterfly flying into the moon, like coming out from the sea. Okay, brilliant. You know, I really need that for my I really need that for my content. Like, I really want these models to start actually building the education and use cases like for their own website, so that when I make a video on them and they go onto it, they're like, right, you make talking headshots. These would be some great examples for different prompts, for different B-roll. Like, just give me some realistic, because that's what people who are kind of on the fence as to whether they're useful or not. There's a lot of the education out there, unfortunately, from people on X, especially, is how can we make these tools do the biggest and best and most crazy creative things? And that is just not realistic to how people are going to use them day to day. And so actually I found that the education that's like the boring education that's like, this is how you do a cinematic B-roll shot of flying through a city, or just a really slow zoom, like nobody wants to see that. It's not cool, it's not fun, it's not interesting, but it's practical. And so I think, because a lot of the creators that are creating their education they want views, they want impressions. We discussed this about LinkedIn, right, the other week, where people want to show the flashy, shiny new objects. They want to show the tools in the best ways. And actually, I think that means that there's creating a real small lack of education that's like, hey, you can just do this. Like even just with the generative fill, I'm doing a video for Adobe in a couple of weeks, and I simply use generative fill for my thumbnails. That I take behind me, and the way that I take them, I have a little gap on the side, because when I zoom in, the image quite isn't big enough, and it's kind of dark, so you can't really see it. You can see some of like this backdrop, and all I do is I get it to fill that in. It's not special, it's not wow, it's not more, but it's just a really nice, simple, practical use case that I think a lot of people are not quite seeing because of the AI educators and people do this content. They don't show those really simple, practical use cases when people go, actually, I didn't really think of it just being that simple and easy to use. And I'm like, that's what we need more of. Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but I think that's
why they've approached you and done the right thing, Ben, because they know you're a content creator that a lot of content creators go to for content tips. And so when you're saying, this is exactly how I use the product in my actual day-to-day, that's going to be equatable to a lot of people. By the way, I've really appreciated these AI brands that have this like understanding of how they're solving the problem differently. I'll give you two great examples. Perplexity. I don't even think of them as a large language model. They're a search engine, right? So they've just solved a different problem to everyone else. I also think of like Loopy and Hedra. We had the Hedra CEO come onto our podcast the other day. They're solving the talking heads thing in a very different way as well. And they're even giving you different ways and fun ways to create content. Like, so you upload like a 30-second music clip, and then you upload like a photo of your face, and then it makes your mouth move as though you're talking lyrics, and it adds all the emotion in. And that, to me, is very, very simple marketing translatability of this is what it can be useful for. Instead of going, here's a massive new video model that can do multiple things, it's here's a very fun talking head thing that you can get on board with and try out straight away, like...
What was the new model that came out, Chris, that was competing with Hedra?
Loopy.
Loopy. Yeah.
And that's from
available?
ByteDance.
Can you get access to that? I couldn't find how you could get access to it.
You, if anyone, will get access early because it's a ByteDance TikTok thing.
Oh, is it from ByteDance, is it?
Yeah.
It looked pretty good in the demo. They've only got the demos. Never trust the demos. But
very good. And we talked, I don't know if we talked about on this one, but yes, we did actually. Remember when I told you how many of a percentage TikTok pays out to their creators being 5%, and then how much they pay out to music labels being 30% of their revenue? Well, this... generative music, talking heads, is going to solve a lot of those issues that TikTok have in terms of how much revenue they're paying out to music labels. Because if you can generate music and generate talking heads and get viral content from your own AI platforms, less of a need to have music labels' music on there.
Just going back, guys, just to like a few observations of what you started describing, both of you, and I think, Chris, your point around Perplexity being the gold standard of finding white space in a 100%. Very noisy, confusing environment. I think their branding is beautiful.
Yeah.
They're almost like Art Deco meets technology. They've got this really interesting design treatment, the language they use, the purpose. They very seldomly talk about the technology. They're trying to innovate in advertising in terms of how they integrate ads. They've got a very dialed in audience. I think they're a beautiful user case of a company doing it right. To succeed.
Can I add another one to that just quickly? Their marketing is like Dropbox or it's like MailChimp, and they're genius. So the CEO said recently, if you get 500 people within your school to sign up to Perplexity, you can all have it free for a year.
Yeah, tactically very smart.
That is absolutely genius thinking. That's the Facebook move. Remember when Facebook started as a university thing? And then how did Zuckerberg get it to other universities? He said, sign up your friends in other universities and stuff like that, and you'll all get access to this like network. And that is genius, because they understood that it's mainly used by researchers and people with an undergraduate degree, and that they can massively onboard people that will get such a use out of it for that year that they will become invaluable to them for the future. They'll be lifelong customers of Perplexity. So giving them 500 access for free is just genius long-term marketing thinking that none of these platforms I've seen have even come close to that level of like onboarding.
Yeah, the lesson for me just broadly is, and I'll go back to a couple of points I want to make. I think your point there around you're only able to do great marketing if you're very clear on who you are. You have a common language, you have a clear purpose you're solving. What all technology companies, and I'm going to say almost all, because we're saying Perplexity is an exception, they have something I call the curse of knowledge, meaning they know too much. They're deeply enrooted into their thing. They can't see the wood for the trees. Yet the customers, the buyers, people don't care. No one cares about you. So for you to get them to care first, you must have a point of difference. You must be very clear. And technical teams never understand this because they spend all day in closed walls speaking to other technical people. So I think emerging tech as a industry has a communication problem. What we were talking about earlier in the show around your advantage will be knowing the sector you're in is exactly why Perplexity win, as an example, because they understand search and they're very clear to your point. They know their audience. You were describing there, Chris. They went undergraduates, academics, people,
researchers.
They went very dialed in. And what do those people care about? Truth. When the backdrop is hallucinations and mistruths, they went, we have an anchor point and a bigger mission that we can now take us well into the future. Whether they are the most truthful, accurate platform, it doesn't matter. They've owned that space early in our consciousness and, they've done some smart things there. And then the third part, I'd probably just say that a lot of these product teams and these innovators and tech people, they fall in love with features and innovating, and they go so far removed from what the core purpose is. Not the technology, it's the problems you solve. And it's kind of the thread of a lot of the things we've been talking about. And when I consider all this, I think the future is won in a really material way by great communicators that understand how to distill complex things into simple language that people understand. And then it's going to be won secondary by just the people that read the manual. I would consider us guys that go out, research, curious for our professional interests, but also our personal interests. I think we read the manual, knowing we know the art of possible. We're trying to get better at our crafts, our sectors, what we do for our partners, our clients, and so on. And I think that's the secret formula. Learn to have a renewed appreciation for language, communication in both visual form, but also in, oral form, written form. And also alongside that, read the goddamn manual. That's like my number one motto. And it's like, Bennett, you say this a lot around do your own demos. Stop
Yeah, finally. Someone said it.
I think that's the wisdom that we need to just champion that and get that on a t-shirt or something.
Yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this, basically, there are very few of the people you follow actually actively doing the thing that they say they're doing. What they're doing is being news aggregators. And they're not, creators actually using tools.
Is there anything wrong with that? Is there any? I'm going to play devil's advocate, even though I fucking hate it. Is there anything? is there anything wrong with being news aggregators?
I don't think if you're a full-time YouTuber, you can be anything else. I think that is a full-time job, and it's a very useful one to be able to, spread the message of these tools, and, you basically make your own little siloed, here's who follows me and gets updates from me. But the thing that annoys me is when they pretend that they're Hollywood directors making the next film, and then this is the exact thing. And it's no, this is just a rip-off of somebody else's content that you remade because you have no actual workflow skills, and you're not a creative agency delivering film projects for clients. You are just an individual that talks about AI tools.
Well, it goes back to just my point that I made earlier about the fact that the news aggregators just aggregate all of the news created by other creators, and for those creators, they will just create the biggest and shiniest things the tool can do, and then the aggregators make it seem like it's more useful than it actually is.
Yes,
or
exactly.
Like because I've seen this happen so many times over the last year, where like I'll see somebody make a video or talk about a tool, and they're like, "Oh, this is amazing! Look at all these examples, so great!" And I'm like, "Oh, well, that I could do a video on that. That'd be great." I go and test the tool, I go and use it, and I'm like, "This is shit. This is so
picking.
shit." Like how has that news aggregator person just and even the original person just put this out almost as like it's better than, it's better than that because they want views. They want views, they want impressions. They don't care about actually showing what it's really like. But I think that's a real opportunity to stand out for people in this space. Instead of just being the person that just, creates the shiniest video, actually go, do you know what? I created 10, and there are people that do this. I created 10 videos here. You're on the same prompt. Here are my examples. As you can see, not quite great. Here it was like give actual like honest opinions on what's good, what's not so good. And I just think somebody could really stand out as a strong thought or opinion leader in the space if they just followed that strategy, rather than just being one of these sheep that just follows the strategy of let me just collect all of the best examples and just share those and give no opinion.
And on the sheep analogy, there's a lot of sheeple out there following sheep, right? So, try and look for individuals that do stuff that's much more useful and actually show the truth. But that is the pitfall of lots of these full-time YouTubers, is that they're either sponsored by or they have some sort of affiliation with, and then they can't talk negatively about a specific thing, even if they feel that it's not that great. So a lot of people in personal branding talk about this word authenticity. That's their version of authenticity. They need to just be like, look, I'm being paid by these guys, but honestly, it's not that great yet. But it has a lot of ways that it can be great in the future. But then for a brand to be bold enough to get any sort of feedback from a creator about that, that's another thing that stops that from happening. They just say, can't talk negatively, can't say this, can't say that. And it's all these can and can't do things. So there's friction there. And that's where someone that hasn't got a stake in the game can have a true voice that people will follow for their authentic, personal opinion about the best tools legitimately. Not just the best tools that have marketing spend that pay YouTubers, but the best tools as of, I don't get paid by any of these guys, and here's my real thoughts.
Do you know what, on that, Chris? I think we've spoken about this before, on that idea that a lot of these tools don't want the people to talk negatively about them. But I just wonder on what negative impact that has at the moment on first-time users, because they go in with a level of expectation that is up here, and then they get to the tool and it's down here, and it's like, this is shit. Don't now trust that influencer. Don't trust this company. I'm never going to use this again. Rather than an approach where it's like you set the expectation. Look, this is what it is. This is what it's good at. So it's not good at. And then people, it's free. You get 10 use cases. And then you go to it, and then they expect, okay, yeah, it's okay. I might still use this again. I just wonder what impact that has on because I think a lot of first time users in the space are getting annoyed at the fact that people are making it seem like things are better than they are. And I know that because I read comments and I see people, my audience, complain a lot.
It's really small term thinking, because I'm not going to dead name these. There's a few models I could in the video space right now. They've cherry picked the results, and then you go to the homepage and it looks amazing. And then you try it and it's absolutely terrible. And they want to charge you £100 plus a month in order to access it, which is 5 times what others cost that are far better. But they didn't have such cherry-picked videos in the beginning. And so this is disillusioned thinking. You really just need to know the capabilities yourself and charge appropriately if you're going to compete long-term.
It's interesting, though, because as you were describing that, Chris, I think a lot about marketeers and brand teams. Everybody focuses on, if you've done any kind of education in marketing, we tend to forget that it's a real discipline. And the first thing you learn is the 4 Ps. And the thing that everybody talks about is one of the P's, which is promotion. People don't think of product, they don't think of pricing. Everyone just jumps straight to promotion. And I think there's a reality that when you're talking about these dynamics, they're a bit more nuanced. So, for example, if you said to me, right, there's this video model that's 5 times more expensive, but it was really good at this one thing or this one sector, in, say, a affluent sector like finance, maybe that's worthwhile. But to a creator where the economy, they've got lots of choice, they're probably more educated, that perception of value is different, right? So the context really matters when you come up, and too many companies think of promotion. They maybe don't put enough effort into product, and they certainly don't think of price positioning. And all of this then goes back to what Ben was describing there. Expectation management is everything. Like if
you start from a mistrustful place, that's terrible.
Yeah,
it's short-sighted, and that's where I actually think there's a disrespect to marketeers. That people don't understand the nuance of all this stuff. It's marketing is psychology or behavioral science meets business, and both of those are nuanced. Someone asked me the other day, I was at a meeting, and they said, what makes a good marketeer? And I really had to think about it. I didn't kind of respond straight away. What makes a great marketeer? And his reference point was, if I want a great accountant, they have to be good at maths and X, Y, and Z. If I want a great lawyer, they have to be great at rationalizing information and structuring an argument. You know, what makes a great marketeer? And the only thing that I could really distill it down to as a modern marketeer is 2 things. One, understanding people, being empathetic, trying to be, an empath, having perspective, because I think if I'm going to communicate with you in the most effective way, I need to understand you. So that in part. And the second part was curiosity. How many choices do we have? We go week to week and we never run out of tools to talk about, updates to talk about, and we are the 1% of people in industry that are down this rabbit hole. The rest of the industry isn't, and nor should they be, by the way. Who cares? Everyone each to their own, right? So I go, so many in the industry don't have a real appreciation for marketing because most of the marketing industry are not marketeers. That's the problem. The entire industry.
True, yeah.
Very few actual marketeers. I could count. Honestly, I've hired hundreds of people. I've worked with probably thousands in some capacity over my career. And I could probably name 10 marketeers if I'm being really honest with you.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah. It's wild. It really is wild.
It's so true. And lifelong learners are the thing that I look for too. When I look at people that are marketeers, I'm like, the fast-paced environment that you're about to enter, if you're not a lifelong learner, you're doomed. Because you'll get stuck in like a rat back in where you think you're really good, and then you won't continue to evolve. But truth tellers is the biggest thing for me, because if the first line of attack, which is marketers, they're the first way that your brand gets out there. If that comes from an untruthful place, everyone else in the company is doomed. The business development person, the account manager, the CEO, the CFO, they've all got to worry because what the marketer did was not translate the truth to the audience. And so that's everything's, a domino effect from there is going to come in. And not enough marketers are truthful these days. A lot of them elaborate because they feel like they have to. A lot of them just tell things like, oh, our brand's the number one. We're, the difference makers. You've never seen a business like us before. I hear all of these things and there's no backup. There's no actual, here's how we are stating this claim and here's why we're stating this claim. It's all just big flashy words to get people to listen to you because you can't attract them in any other way. And that to me is not good marketing.
So yeah,
not at all.
Yeah, I want to speak about that because I think about this a lot, Chris. It's the same parallels happen in content creation. Short form, long form, trying to get the viewer's attention with
non-clickbait or real clickbait or whatever it is.
It's finding a balance, and what that balance is. I think what makes a good marketeer is the person that finds that balance in that they push the claims right to the edge of being genuine, borderline not believable, but still within you're still on the right side of the line to generate maximum, to generate enough intrigue,
Interest or
curiosity,
engagement,
interest, but then also when the thing is delivered or sold or expectations then aren't just shot right down because they've aligned what they've said with what is being delivered. And in content creation, this is happening all the time with, use a hook, get the game changer example, or like, I've just found the best tool, the text to video model ever. Like, it's incredible. Here it is. People go and use it. That will get me a fuck ton of views. That will get me so many views because I am clickbaiting with false information. But when people go and view it and use it, it's not as good. Expectations are very different. That then reflects badly on me and my brand. Well, next time Ben does a video that says that, I don't trust him as much as I did before. But I want views. I want impressions. I want reach. If I was just my actual, true, honest self and used, I've just found like a really average tool, and I'm just going to show you. People are not going to care. So how do I use words, sentences, and whatever to make up my script that is within within that circle, that it's, I'm not stretching it. And I think finding the balance between doing that to get maximum reach, maximum impressions, but also then not negatively impact expectation and after delivery, you know what I'm saying, is like, that I think makes a good marketeer. I think that's and a content creator. That's really hard to fucking achieve. It takes a lot of time and a lot of practice, because
I think that's the most valuable skill in 2024.
That over the long run, that's where you build, brand integrity. You like get people coming back,
Exactly.
But then you also are like right on the edge of getting as many impressions, get as much interest. And it's something I think about a lot, because I watch people make videos on the same things as me, making basically much wilder false claims and getting more views than me, and think, shit, I could make that claim and get more views, but what is the negative impact back on them because they've made those false claims?
Matey,
catchy hook that has to be true. That's the thing. Storytelling, that's
kind
the
of
thing. Storytelling needs to be the thing that like underpins all of that, because that's where the catchy hook that's also true comes from. Like, it's good storytelling and having some sort of premise.
Yeah, it's the sweets. You're arguing about sort of harmony and balance between the marketeers or content creators. There's very clear parallels. It's all attention in some capacity.
It's very tempting to go the way Ben said, and just go extreme with your claim and then not be able to back it up. But that's the like catch-22 of the situation of algorithms. Is that's how the algorithm works, and you need to build a long-term brand. So the middle point is where you need to go for, and be okay with not always going viral, because that's not actually the right followers. They're not the right customers. They're not the truth tellers. They're not the ones that trust you. It's just you got some bait that caught an algorithm wave, and good for you. But they won't convert to customers,
Yeah, and look, I think with all these things, it's like, it's not either or, and it's what you described is a really hard tension and balance. And I'm sure all of us fall one side of the over promotion line, and other times, we fall short of like, it's dull, like that. It's a like it's a
that's
too,
what
right?
I'm trying to say.
It's a line. Anyway, gents,
it's a lot more in the dull camp on LinkedIn than TikTok. I can assure you of that one.
But I think you can. So I have, as I said, I think about this a lot, and it's just the way that you use words and the way that you actually generate curiosity rather than making statements on how good something is. It's like, I would love to give examples, but I can't put any to my head. So I'll sort of make statements like, found this new tool and I think you should probably check this out. Or you'd be silly to not check this out. And I'm then like making people curious about checking it out by making no statement or claim on how good it is. So you don't know the reason why I'm asking you to check it out. It could be because it's interesting, it's unusual, it's different. I'm not saying it's a game changer. I'm just saying it's it's interesting to some extent. You, like giving people FOMO for not checking it out, and then they can then make their own decision there, and they're not going to then come back to me and go, well, Ben said it was this or said it was this. No, I just said I think you should check it out. So I am trying to always play with hooks that I can generate that curiosity and intrigue and get those views, but also maintain my integrity because I don't make statements that aren't true.
And if I was a follower of you, Ben, and I trusted your opinion, that's exactly the type of thumbnail I'd click on.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be interested in the bold claim ones because I know that they're often just, completely overestimating exactly what's there. I'd be much more likely to say this is the thumbnails for me to click on. You don't want to miss out on this one, and that's it. That's all you need to say to me.
I'm writing a script for a video this weekend. I found this really cool website somebody has built. It's a video library of loads of different examples of different TikTok formats.
That's dope.
Different types of form, like green screen, somebody has built this tool that has got 10 examples for about 100 different formats of videos. And I just thought,
nice.
This is really fucking cool. How do I create it's not the best website I've ever found in the world, but it's interesting. It's valuable. So I'm like, well, how do I generate a hook that is enough to convince somebody to go and see it, but doesn't, sell them dreams,
the problem with all this, it's like integrity meets algorithms. Unfortunately, most binary, the most extreme,
I like that.
Strongest.
Integrity meets algorithms. That's brilliant, mate.
It's going to win. They're going to win on the attention wars. But I would say I'd taper that with Ben. You're in the business of Ben forever. So the more you preserve your integrity, you'll find your crowd and it'll grow. It might grow a little slower than some of your peers. And obviously I'm coming for you because have you seen my numbers? Mr.
The influencer.
I thought I'd throw that back in there. I've got I want to conclude on this because this is really fascinating. I went to LinkedIn Thursday, gave them a talk.
How did it go?
Yeah, really cool. It was just kind of like a workshop of my observations and why I do video, etc., etc. And the interesting thing, since I publicly went out and speculated and said, hey, my videos have been popping for these reasons, it's not because I'm smarter or better than I was 3 months ago, it's because the video feed has been favored. They fucked me.
You're not getting them anymore.
One video artificially boosted since I came out and revealed the curtain. And I did 4 videos, and before it was every second video. Now they're not boosting me. I'm going to have to rest on my laurels as ideas that people may find interesting. I'm going to have to revert back to that.
Should have gate kept it. You should have gate kept it.
Cool. All right, then. It's awesome chat as always. Speak soon.
Sweet. Bye-bye.